All right. Let's see. Yep. YouTube is telling me that I'm live. Well, hello there. Happy Thursday as I'm recording this. I didn't have a chance to put out to make a proper video. At least not yet. You never know. I haven't had a chance to do it yet since I was traveling. Been in Maine since, let's see, got back last night. Leaving on Sunday. So I didn't quite have a chance to do much. Well, I mean, I could have, but nothing really came up. Hard to get inspired, hard to find places to record, then hard to be inspired. Just not inspired by the kind of things that make gameable videos for the most part. I think I did throw out a short, basically, put on the behind the screens channel about salt marshes, which were really cool. There's some really pretty salt marshes on the Maine coast. Probably get into that in another one. But I had something. Hey, my ear trumpet, thanks so much. I have something, the Book of Winter, published by, I forget the name. So it's written by Andrea Tupac Malika, and I'm forgetting the name of the publishing arm of this, which is, Hellwinter Forge of Wonders. Who they sent me this. They sent me a few of their things just for, in case you've not seen these before, and I've been in kind of a little bit of a slow run with these as of late. But I don't pre-read anything. Nobody gives me any. Nobody makes any demands of me. I ask nothing. I want nothing, and I just kind of read them as they go. Let me flip to the back of the books. I think that gives the best summary of what exactly the Book of Winter is, which is the only thing I did read this part, at least part of it, because I needed to kind of summarize what the heck this thing actually is. The Book of Winter is a supplement designed for referees and players that revises the Ranger class, the solitary explorers of the wilderness. Whether your campaign passes through snow-choked forests, forgotten barrows, or half-starved border towns, this volume offers tools, tales, and threats to bring the wild to life at your table. Within the module, you'll find the revised Ranger class, including rules for animal companions, a collection of 6 unique animal companions, 4 Ranger fellowships embodying different takes on the character class, new armor, weapons, and items, Blood on the Snow, a one-on-one adventure for a 6th-level Ranger and a companion, tables for weather, eerie encounters, and locations in the wilderness, and an original ambient soundtrack to play during your game. I don't have the ambient soundtrack download. It does exist. It is part of the package you get on drive-thru. I just didn't download it, so I don't know what that sounds like yet. My ear trumpet wants to know, what does snow chucked look like? That's a good question. It sounds like a familiar phrase, but I'm having a hard time visualizing what it means. Snow chucked. Oh, that would be snow choked. Yeah, snow chucked is like when they're all throwing things at you. That's when you've got lots of chucked. You've got snow chucked at your heads. Okay. Finishing off a little bit of this Island Punch Spindrift for the working man. And then I have some of my Aqua Fresca in reserve. My cat Betty is here with me. Hopefully she'll be cool and not want to suddenly leave because I've got the door shut. So now, having covered what we're getting here, I am a huge Ranger fan. This probably doesn't ever come through in my videos. Classically, I'm a big fan of the Ranger. I mean, there are a few classes that I always gravitated to. And in fact, when I played Ironsworn, my character was essentially a Ranger. I went and created a Ranger type. I had a missile weapon, kind of shifty with sort of an animal kind of thing. I've always dug the Ranger. Now, I don't necessarily need the Ranger. The modern conception of the Ranger, I could give or take, but I don't know. I've always liked these kind of a little bit stealth, a little bit martial, woodlands, outdoorsy types. I've always dug them. I mean, I've enjoyed a lot of things, but I'm always like, so I'm kind of interested in what they're doing. This is for old school essentials, so that would be our baseline. It's essentially like BX. There is no Ranger in default in BX. I know that I haven't really read old school essentials advanced. I think because and people seem to have, I don't know, I see varying opinions on it. Some people really like advanced, some people don't like advanced. I haven't read it. Advanced, if I'm recalling correctly, does backports the kind of AD&D classes to OSE. I'm not sure. Again, having not read it, I don't know if it does a good job or not. But I'm not sure. I don't know where that came from, but I don't know whether this is a takeoff on the OSE Advanced Ranger, that is that backport of an AD&D like Ranger, or something totally new and unique. Well, I guess we'll find out. So with that said, let's just delve into it. I don't know why I'm wasting time blathering on. We've got about, call it 39, 38 pages before we get to the OGL. We have a forward here. I'm going to be judicious in what I read, as has kind of become my want. Let's see. So the characters live in an old empire spanning across a vast continent. At its heart sits the Obsidian Throne, where Emperor Egon Kruvaya the 12th rules from the capital city of Rumne. Or Rumen? I'm going to go with Rumne. Yet the empire is mired in a time of deep political unrest, fractured by competing factions, fading loyalties, and the slow decay of old certainties. Though the empire has long prided itself on religious tolerance, its official faith remains the cult of the first mother, the deified Ezebeth Kruvaha, the legendary war lady who carved it from chaos. Now, as you can see here, the Book of Winter shares the same game world as some other things that we have looked at. I know we've looked at Tales of the Wolfguard. I believe we did Sword of the Dragon Slayer and Ulfhedin Werewolf Warriors as well. I don't know. The other ones don't. I think we did House of the 99 Souls. I'm not sure about some of the other ones, but there's a whole universe here. And I kind of think this is a cool way to go about it, is sort of build up your setting with various books and different things that give you some value adds, but you also get this context of, okay, this particular ranger kind of is suited for the setting. Not to say you can't move it somewhere else, but it's all kind of building on this setting. And if you're collecting, you appreciate the work and you're sort of invested in this publisher, you know that all this stuff's kind of fit together in their home setting, which is kind of cool. I like it. All right, enough about that. We're going to skip. Here we go. So here is the revised class. Let's just get down to brass tacks. So the class features requirements: minimum con 9, minimum wiz 9. So wisdom and constitution are its requirements. Its prime requisite is strength, though, which is interesting. I'm not a stickler, and I'm not someone who's got memorized like, oh, what does BX have? I suppose I could look it up just out of curiosity. If the minimums and then the prime requisites are often different or the same. I actually have BX under my desk in my handy dandy binder. I'm just curious. I'm not, no shade on whatever they're doing either way, but I'm always curious about, is this a decision that they're making, or is this something specific? So if we go to BX, let's see, we've got, that's the table. Okay. So for example, your handy dandy fighter, where is it? Wait, where are they're the classes. Where are the prerequisites for the classes? Does it say? It must say somewhere, right? Okay, so here we go. So, for example, Dex is the prime requisite for thieves, and one of them for halflings. Strength is a prime requisite for fighters and dwarves. And then the other one is for the minimums. Do clerics have any minimums? Does anyone have any minimums? I don't think they do. Yeah, I don't. I wonder if that's an AD&D-ism. I think that is an AD&D-ism, because I'm thinking about it, like, there are any minimums for things. Now, obviously, if your prime requisite stinks, it's kind of like a soft, you might call it a soft minimum, your prime requisite, because you want, if you're I'll say a fighter, right? You want your prime requisite to be as good as it can be, because then you either get penalized or you get either bonus XP or you're penalized XP. So for example, the halfling, whose prime requisites are strength and dexterity, if they're a 13 or higher, they get a 5% bonus to earned XP. If they're greater, if both scores are greater than 13, they receive 10%. Right? So the better your scores are, the better you'll get. And I thought maybe there was somewhere they actually earned they got a penalty, but I might be mixing that in from something else too. So I'm wondering if because they're doing the OSE advanced thing, that's why we have minimums. Now it's if you might notice here, well, this thing you have con is your minimum con, minimum wisdom, but your primary is not con or wisdom. And what I just reminded myself of, but it's always nice to read the books, is that at least in BX regular, no Constitution's not a prime requisite. And that makes sense because it's kind of building strength on strength. Because if your prime requisite is con, you're going to want high. Everyone wants high Constitution because of bonus hit points and all that stuff, right? So that's the con's always the one that you want. It's con is never a dump stat. And I hate that term dump stat, but in terms of an old school kind of game, Constitution's never just put your lowest score in con. Like you never want to do that. So in this case, by saying, hey, we're not going to make your prime requisite con, even though that in a sense for Ranger, I could see Constitution, that toughness, which to me could equate with things like, you're surviving in the outdoors. That's definitely something you consider somebody tough who can do that stuff. You look at the Bear Grylls of the world or Survivor Man or people like that, you think, wow, those guys must be tough, right? Which is your Constitution. But I get it. But I'm not sure why the requirements are, but I'm just going to take a wild guess that is for the advanced OSE thing, which maybe brings that in. I could see just getting rid of it. Just using your prime requisite of strength, or even giving 2. Now, I don't know what they're doing. We don't know what they're doing yet with the class. If there's a lot going on with, say, like an elf or like another class where you might think, you know what, they really need 2, and maybe we would have 1 be strength and 1 be dex, or 1 be dex and 1 be wisdom, or something like that. But we can go with that. So anyway, that's what we got. So they're D8 hit dice. I'm not in love with D8 hit dice. Just because I feel like that's the fighter's realm. I know not, and again, not knowing OSE Advanced and how they deal with barbarians and things like that, and D&D has done different things. I myself feel like fighters should have the highest hit dice. That should just be a rule. I just feel like no other class, because the fighter, that's all, they're not getting much. And when you started with, say, something like OD&D, where only fighters could use certain things. I think like some of the bows, I think only fighters could use bows, or maybe longbows, something like that. And only fighters could use magic swords. Only fighters could do certain things. There was that little bit of that niche protection, which I appreciate a little bit of. I like a lot of overlap, but I do like what's what, they're a little bit, got a little something. That's kind of their own, right? But it gets eroded over time. And I think when you have this class that their only thing is, they have access to all the magic and armor, great. And I'm thinking hit dice to me is part of that, because hit dice to me is part of that just absorbing damage, which to me, at least, if you're going to look at something and say, what is a fighter good at? They're the best at hitting stuff, and they're best at, to me, the best at hitting stuff, the best at taking hits. That should be the things that, at least taking everything else away, the fighter should have to itself. So I just myself, my own personal opinion, I'm not a fan of is when they start giving D8 hit dice to everything. Like, barbarians, they should have D10s. Like, no, give them some other ability, give them something, but I feel like fighters should be D8. I don't really like barbarian as a class either. That's a whole other video, though I've probably made that video before, but but again, it's a very personal thing. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. I just happen to not like it. Okay, maximum level 14, that's fine. Armor up to scale, but no shields. Okay, weapons up to a bastard sword, and languages, alignment, and common. Shall we read the kind of flavorish text? I suppose we should, since that's kind of the thing about this book. Rangers are members of a fellowship, most often sanctioned by imperial law or part of the imperial army, whose task is to guard a designated region of the empire's vast wilderness. Their usual duties include fighting banditry that preys upon remote steadings and vital trade routes, and hunting monsters that blight the land and threaten isolated rural communities. They are the Empire's unseen shield against the perils lurking beyond the hedgerow and the last village lantern. All right, that makes sense. That's a cool story. All Ranger fellowships recognized by Imperial law strictly maintain their ranks for lawful or neutral members only, upholding the order and the sanctioned defense of the realm. Discipline and adherence to their sworn purpose are paramount. However, whispers persist of rogue guilds of rangers who have fallen prey to darkness, embracing a chaotic alignment. The goals of these renegades are acknowledged to be as dire as they are mysterious, a grim counterpoint to the sanctioned guardians of the wilds. All right. Now, out of curiosity, again, not knowing what they get, so they're getting a companion. So this ranger, Retro says a berserker class instead of barbarian. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple ways to hash out what you want your barbarian kind of thing to be. Right? Conan wasn't a berserker. Hey, Meyer Trumpet, thanks so much. Conan was not a berserker, right? He, you look at it in whatever their first, I forget the first, that supplement that was kind of deities, demigods, and heroes. I forget exactly what it was called because it wasn't quite called that. But, he was kind of part fighter, part thief. Conan was sort of the mishmash of a bunch of things. But he wasn't a berserker. He wasn't somebody that went crazy in battle and wore wolf pelts. I mean, he would wear a wolf pelt, but, he didn't have a mystical sort of thing that you think about with berserkers, at least if you go with kind of the Norse berserker, not somebody who just goes kind of nuts, right? But certainly, yeah, berserker could be, if you want to take the rage element of barbarians and build on that, then yeah, you might go berserker. If you want to look at more of a Conan type thing, maybe you think they're someone who really is just a multi-class that's just very good. Yeah, they're a thief and they're a part fighter and they wear light armor and whatever. There's multiple ways to do it. If you want to go kind of an outlander type, Conan definitely was not biting his shield. Yeah, that was one of the things that the Norse berserkers, I think, theoretically did, was to get into their fighting frenzy. They might bite their shields, and there's some really cool stuff about that. But Conan wasn't any of that stuff, right? And Conan, I think of Aragorn as sort of the ranger who at least began the ranger thing. Though, Aragorn did not have animal companions, and he didn't have access to druid magic. Though, he had some. There was definitely some mystical stuff about Aragorn, but not in the sort of druid way. I think of Conan as kind of like the Conan the Barbarian, right? Being kind of the barbarian. And in any case, a lot of ways to hack that if you want to. Now, it seems pretty clear from this, unless there's going to be several versions of the Ranger, that the Ranger they're going for is not the kind of Aragorn type Ranger, which is kind of a weird one anyway. Because yeah, he was a great outdoorsman, but if you go back and look at the Dragon article where the Rangers, I think, first show up, they tried to do kind of a thing where basically giving you an Aragorn type. They had a limited sort of companions, which was kind of from the books. It didn't make it into the movies, but the idea is he had these other Dunedain companions, and you can only have so many of those. And it's almost paladin-like in the ways that you could only have so much, and you had to sort of be kind of on your feet. And there is this sort of, I don't know if it's really assumed, but kind of like this path to sort of a king kind of character, which was, Aragorn. That's kind of all gone now by, I think, what we're talking about here. And now we're getting more into the guy in the woods with an animal or with nature magic or potentially both. But here it looks like, it looks like I don't see any magic stuff yet, but definitely we've got the companion. So we've got level there to get to level 14. I just want to compare it to something else. I don't know if this is a good comp or not, but just because I'm curious, again, I'm not super huge on trying to nitpick and say, oh, well, they should have this many experience or not. If we compare, I don't know what would be a good comparison in sort of BX Prime, but if I compare it to, we'll go with a halfling. So in the basic book, and I can look at expert for the higher levels, to get to third level, a halfling needs 4,000 hit points. And so this is getting a little bit more than, so a halfling's first 3 levels, just for comparison, and I compare it to a halfling because they don't have a crazy amount of stuff going on, but they have a few special tricks. They're kind of outdoorsy also. So they have 2,000 to go up to second level and then 4,000 to go up to third level. And elves are up in that 4,000 to 8,000 range. And these are it looks like it's just a shade above dwarves. So the dwarves are 2,250. Sorry, dwarves are 2,200 to go to second level and 4,400 to go to third level. And here they're just a little bit different. So if you think about this in terms of where at least the author is placing these in terms of their structure, you might think, okay, kind of right around a dwarf. A shade more than a dwarf, much less than an elf, a little bit more than a halfling, let's say. So that's where we're at. Saves, I'm going to assume, I'm not going to bother looking those up. And then we get this companion whose dice go up from D4, and then every 3 levels go up 1, I guess, type. What would you call that, where the dice go up? The amount of faces, so you go from a D4, and at the end it's a D12. We get some titles, which is cool. So they start off as an arrow, and they end up as a captain at 10 plus level. Combat, they can use all weapons up to the bastard sword. I'm not sure what that means, up to, in this case. I kind of wish they would just say this kind of weapon, this kind of weapon, this kind of weapon, because up to makes it seem like they're not. There's not a pyramid of weapons with something at the top. Bastard swords are two-handed, so maybe I would just prefer if they just said, hey, they can use one-handed swords, one-handed axes, two-handed swords, maybe not two-handed axes. I'm not sure. So when they say up to the bastard sword, does that mean that pole arms are not included because they're above bastard sword, or well, I'm not sure. And you could probably list them somewhere. So that's maybe they're just trying to avoid listing it. But that's why I just think you could say, hey, one-handed this, one-handed that, two-handed this, two-handed that. And then where does bows and things fit in there? Because up to bastard sword, it's putting some kind of progression on weapons, which doesn't really exist, at least in my thinking. And they can use up to scale mail, which I don't think, maybe that is a OSE advanced thing. So I don't know if we have scale mail. Is there scale mail BX? There probably is. I'm just going to look. Let's see. No, there isn't. So BX plain vanilla just has leather, chain, and plate, above kind of clothing, not including shields. So I don't remember where scale mail fits in. I feel like scale mail is right before or after. Is it after chain? Does it go chain, scale, plate? I'm not sure. My ear trumpet says, would a ranger use a polearm? Well, it depends if you think of spears and the like. Would a long spear, would a boar spear, would that qualify as a polearm? It kind of depends, right? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if if a long spear like that is considered a polearm. I don't know what I'm not knowledgeable enough on the technical weapon discussion to know what separates. I just think of a polearm as a two-handed weapon on a shaft that's long. So I would think those big kind of spears would be polearms, longer spears. But if you tell me they're not, I'll believe you because I have no separate knowledge. I only have game knowledge. I only have wherever they show up in the equipment list. Also, it's the other thing, right? I don't feel like I need to. I guess I don't want to be overly restrictive. If you imagine your ranger using, it doesn't make sense from a hunting purpose, but since they're potentially chasing bandits and stuff, like a man catcher, would that be a polearm? I would kind of think it might be. There's all kinds of weird weapons. If you want to say I use it, I don't know. I was going to say a trident, but maybe a trident wouldn't qualify as a polearm. Does a polearm have to have? Can it be just a spear? As I know, a lot of polearms they have two, a hammer and a, whatever, or two heads, or a would that be a compound head? I don't know. But I was thinking things like long spears and things like heavy kind of things, or a long staff. Maybe that doesn't qualify as a polearm either. I don't know. Maybe that's another video. What exactly is a polearm? Okay, getting into now. Let's keep going here before I go totally off the rails. Awareness: a ranger surprise only on a roll of a 1 and 1d6, meaning they could be able to take action in a surprise round while their companions are surprised. And that's fine. I always find this, and this is not their fault because this is how OSE does it, or this is how BX does it. This is all, I find this a little bit, I wish there was a different way of doing this slightly, only because you have some monsters that they're surprised on a 3 and 6, but the ranger's only surprised on a 1 and 6. So, like, what is that? I guess you just say, I wish they were more like, you always are surprised, everyone's surprised on a 2 and 6. Rangers subtract 1, certain enemies add 1. So it's a little bit easier to, when you're mixing and matching some of those, you can get a little bit fluky as to what surprises what when. But, bottom line is they don't get surprised much, which I think it tracks, right? Fellowship obligation. Every ranger must pledge allegiance to one of the old fellowships. All the ranger fellowships impose an obligation to its members must uphold without faltering. A ranger who betrays their fellowship becomes a betrayer, loses all the special skills, and becomes a fighter of the same level. Okay, that's really interesting. I think a couple of things here. One, it makes it seem like they're like a little bit of a quasi-mystical thing, which I guess with the animal companion they must have, because you lose everything and become a fighter when you when you get a betrayer. I almost think that I almost wish a little bit that maybe there's the kind of like the anti-paladin, like maybe look at like, well, what if there are these rogue guilds and there are kind of maybe chaotic rangers or whatever. Maybe there's something a little more interesting. They're saying, hey, you lose everything and become a fighter. Maybe you have to find, I mean, I suppose in the game you might just say, hey, you got to find and join one of these rogue guilds to get your powers back, or something else happens. Might be a little bit more interesting than, hey, you just become a fighter. But that's something you can work out in your game. Foraging and hunting, a ranger has a 2 in 6 chance to forage his party and a 2 in 6 chance to find hunting game. I'm not sure what forage his party means. But, basically they can forage and hunt. Stealth, while in the wilderness, a ranger has a 3 in 6 chance of hiding and a 3 in 6 chance of moving silently. Those are good, but they're not going up with your level. I always like when they can kind of go up with your level. Hey, Mark, how are you? I always like these things that kind of go up. They sort of, so they just give you a base 50% chance, which is good, which is very much like the, not quite as good as the Hobbit, but kind of a Hobbitish hiding that's really good in the wild, but doesn't actually go up. I kind of would like if as different ranger levels, you might get a bump to that, but then maybe you would have to start at something less than 50%. Pursuit, when the ranger and their party pursues someone in the wilderness, the fugitive's chance of evasion is reduced by 10%. Okay, that's fine. But I might just say not even someone, just anything. When they're pursuing, because this kind of implies it's just for people, but I just think anything that rangers are pursuing, they got a better chance of finding. Tracking, rangers can identify and follow tracks with improving skill as their level progresses. This is great. So you start off at 20% and go up to 110%. And the reason why they can go above 100 is because you have some modifiers that they give you, which reduce the percentages. So if the tracks are mingled, you come across some confused tracks, that knocks off 50% right there. Rainfall, minus 25% per hour. Soft or hard ground can add or subtract percentage, size of the group, the age, and whether the tracks are hidden or not. So a bunch of things there. I might just do the rainfall at, maybe make it a higher percentage, just have a flat one, just so I don't have to do a per hour kind of thing, but that's me. Secrets of the herbs. At 8th level, the ranger learns the secrets of healing herbs. While in the wilderness, they can swiftly and reliably gather curative plants and administer them to themselves or another living creature. The herbs restore 1d4 hit points per use. The ranger may use this ability a number of times per day, equal to half their companion die value round down. Uses may also be stacked. For example, the ranger may expend 3 uses at once to heal 3d4 hit points in a single action. This special skill can't be employed during combat. Some of these definitely feel like they were cribbing from Aragorn, which is totally fine because he is the Ranger. So like the tracking with all these things. As soon as I saw mingled tracks, I thought of Aragorn when he's trying to locate the hobbits outside Fangorn Forest. And he had to sort out all the orc tracks from the Hobbit stuff. And then the herbs, can you find Athelas? And then, finding it. That's fine. I think I might, this is just me. Instead of making this like a special skill, right? Okay, well, you can use it and you're kind of tying it to this companion die and they do this. I might just say you can spend time hunting for herbs and then give that some kind of success. Maybe just use the foraging success to find healing herbs that then do X amount and then you find X amount of doses. That just might be me. But it's really just it's kind of more of a flavor thing. Like this has more of a kind of a magic ability, another name, whereas my version, it's more mundane. You're finding Athelas and then you're doing that thing like Aragorn does in the book and in the movie, applying it to Frodo's wound. It may be, there's not really anything mystical about it or anything tied, by tying it to the die and making kind of this mechanical thing only 3 times a day or whatever amount of day, right? That kind of makes it seem like it's sort of a supernatural ability, whereas the way I'm looking, it's more just grounded. It's like, yeah, you can find herbs and things. Hey, Krister. But either way works. It's a flavor thing. Okay, so now we get to the companion. At 2nd level, the ranger obtains an animal companion. Choose a companion from a list that we'll see further on. The ranger can issue a command to their companion, consuming a combat action. See below. Alternatively, the ranger can issue a command without consuming their command action by rolling the companion die. The companion die type depends on the character's level. Anytime the character issues a command to the companion without consuming an action, they must roll the companion die. On the result of 3 or more, the command is issued. On a 1 or 2, the command is issued, but the companion die downgrades by 1 type this way. So then basically when it gets down to, so every time you want to do this and you don't fail, you don't fail, but when you don't roll this command die and succeed, you get downgraded. And when you're starting out, it's only a D4 to begin with, so the next downgrade is 0. But at its high level, it would go 12 to 10 to 8 to 6. It's the usage die essentially applied to the companion stuff. And when you get to 0, the ranger can only give a command to the companion by consuming an action. After arrest, the companion die upgrades by 1 type up to the maximum allowed by the ranger's level. Okay, so that's interesting. So you can always give a command, but you can't give them a free action command if your command dies at 0. So I guess this is a way of balancing out how many actions at a time a ranger can use. Because that when they're high level, they can issue, every round they can only issue 1. I'm presuming you only get 1 animal companion, but we'll see. But the more you're doing that, the more it's degraded. So if you want to do something and have your animal companion also do something, you got to roll that die and take your chances. But you're never going to get something where the animal just looks at you and goes, huh? They're always going to do the thing. But then you're going to degrade it down to like, okay, now I have to spend my action, which seems reasonable. And I feel like that's kind of a good way. I'm curious if they're going to use this die for any other thing. But I think that's a reasonable thing. Like, hey, at a certain point, you have to concentrate more on communicating to your companion. Where at some point you can, you're not even looking at the dog and you're like, go, yeah, mule. And it just goes. But then later on, it's like, come on, man, move. And you got to spend more attention on it. So that works for me, I think. All right, Mark says, for their druids in OSE, it gives them the ability to make healing berries. They can make 1 per day per level. They heal 1d2 hit points. They last for 12 hours. Kind of like Goodberry, I guess. Right? I can dig it. And so now we get the commands you could do. So you can give them some set commands. I don't think I need to really go through these too much. So you can give them, tell them to attack. You can tell them to disturb, which seems like it's something to wake them up. I don't know if this is like, hey, your companions have been slept, but tell the dog to go wake them up kind of thing. So I guess I'll really read this one because it seems a little bit different. So disturb, the companion reaches for a target chosen by the ranger and disturbs it. The target must save versus paralysis or abort its current action. A generic combat disturbance causes the target a penalty of +1 or -1. Oops, my stupid janky glasses falling apart. +1 AC and -1. Okay, so basically it just gives it a penalty. Either a penalty both defensively and offensively. Okay, so it's really, I guess it's more of a distract, I guess. They called disturb, made it seem like it was, though I suppose you could use it for getting people out of sleep. Fetch, or go get something. Hunt. Some companions have a special skill. Go special skill! And then track. So with the companion die roll, the ranger can repeat a failed tracking roll. But does that companion, now see, here's the interesting thing, right? If the companion die is degrading from commands, if you've gotten down to 0, then it can no longer track. Or do you always get to use your max companion die for that roll? So this is where you can get some weirdness when you're using some of this stuff, because you think like, oh, okay, D12, that's going to be really good. D4, not so good. Maybe not even worth it at all. What does it mean when the tracking roll? Because what is the tracking use? It's a percentile roll. So how does that work? With the companion die roll, the ranger can repeat a failed tracking. Oh, I guess they just repeat it. I see. So I was misunderstanding. So basically, they just get to repeat the tracking roll. I get it. So in this case, the animal companion isn't making its own tracking roll. It's just giving the ranger an extra tracking roll, which probably is the better way, to be honest. You don't have to track that for different companions, though. It might be fun if you did. Companions growth beginning from the 5th level and every odd numbered level thereafter. The companion gains an additional hit die and consequently may improve its saving throws and THAC0 as per OSE. The player may either roll 1d8 to determine the HP increase or opt for the fixed +4. And then we have a box text on retaliation. Note that anytime a companion draws near an enemy to execute an action of its own or an issued command, it can be the target of a retaliation attack during the enemy's turn. So, your companions are not immune, which I think is something that it's good to have spelled out or at least agreed upon, because I don't, I didn't play a lot with 5th edition and Rangers, but I think that's one of those common things that some people are really sensitive about things happening to their animal companions. But I just feel pretty strongly if you're going to put your animal's companion in harm's way by having them go disturb the enemy spellcaster, and then the enemy spellcaster zaps it, with magic missile or something, then you got to kind of live with it. You can't. To me, I don't think it's fair, just in a world sense, that this animal can go do things and is basically immune from consequences. So if you don't want your animal companion to potentially get hit, then I keep them out of combat. And I guess I would kind of make that sort of another rule. Like, look, as a GM, I'm not going to target your animal companion if they're doing non-combat stuff. Your hawk is flying around. I'm not going to have someone take a pot shot at it. I might have good in-world reasons for having someone take a pot shot at your animal companion. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to let that stuff ride. But as soon as you start going like, oh, I'm going to harry the archer over there with my hawk, I'm like, okay, they're going to take it out. So that's the kind of agreement that I would make. If you keep it out of combat, I'll keep combat off of it. But you enter the fray, you enter the fray. Or it does, right? You can't have it both ways. Companion stats. Most rangers know better than to recklessly employ their companion. A ranger's bond with its animal companion is not merely practical, it is a profound connection of trust and loyalty. The loss of such a companion brings both grief and disgrace. Should a ranger's animal companion perish, they may acquire a new one at the beginning of the next adventure, assuming circumstances allow. Until that point, they suffer a 15% reduction to all XP earned. I think that's fair. I might offer something maybe a little bit simpler just than tracking the 50% penalties, but I think that's fair, right? You don't want to. You should be loath. You should be only in high pressure, high tension situations putting your companion in obvious danger. Now, the flip side is we don't know what those companions are yet. And at, say, second level, when you get one, well, how fragile are they? I mean, obviously, like I just said, in my mind, if you don't put your companion in danger, I'm not going to have danger come to find the companion just for giggles. But I am curious, like if your second level companion is a pigeon, it's just going to take one hit to obliterate it. That might be a little bit rough, but a 15% penalty is not that much, especially at low levels. High levels, it might seem like a lot, but it's not too onerous. So you get a handy dandy free weather generator for spring, summer, fall, and winter. That's cool. Interesting that tornadoes are positions they can only happen in winter, but there's a inherent setting here, so this doesn't have to be what people in Oklahoma might think about when tornadoes show up. It's about tornadoes in the old empire, so I'm fine with that. Now we get on to the fellowships. I might just read a couple of these obligations. Hey, Brian. Brian says, speaking of animal friends, anybody got any ideas for a scheme a villain who controls a rat swarm might get up to? I feel like a villain with a rat swarm, Brian Smith, would make an awesome kind of thieves guild or alternate thieves guild, because you can send rats to grab stuff. Keys, purses, open up things. Like I could see rats being super useful for that. You also have the potential for disease spreading if you want to make that an angle, that they're spreading some kind of sickness, because obviously rats renowned for being disease spreaders, or something else to do with filth, if you will. So those are just a couple ideas off the top of my head, but it sounds very cool. So the Hravna Brotherhood, their obligation is, we are one blood. When a member of the Hravna Brotherhood falls, one of their surviving comrades is bound to ensure the welfare of the fallen's children. The duty might include offering coins, training, or protection. To abandon a fallen brotherhood's kin is to dishonor the brotherhood's most profound bond. So that's kind of a cool one. It's very much a role-playing focused one. It could be more adventuring. What do I have to do to ensure the welfare of my brother ranger's kids? It's definitely, I'd be curious to when this comes up, because if one brother falls and there are three brothers there, three other rangers, and they all kind of point the fingers at each other, like, who's going to take care of the kids? And they're like, well, or do they all do it? But that's cool. I like it. And it means that you could have something if you wanted to have an adventure. Maybe they get a letter saying, hey, so-and-so has fallen. And, you were their, I don't know, God ranger parents, something. I'm not sure. So they have the Kirat Ashen, or is it Ashen? I don't know. Their obligation is speak no false oath beneath the stars. When night falls, no member of the Kirat Ashen may utter or give a promise they do not intend to keep. Their ancestors watch from the stars, and falsehood beneath their gaze brings ruin. This ancient vow shapes their dealings, diplomacy, and welfare. To break it is to invite silence from the spirits that guide them through the desert. All right, that's cool. I like it. I mean, there's a couple things here, right? So as one of these rangers, you might think of like, okay, if I'm going to make any promises like that, I'm doing it during the day. But then on the other hand, you might think of if somebody knows they're the Kirat Ashen knows how that works, they will specifically do it under the stars to force a promise that can't be broken, force an oath. So I like it. But yeah, I just go back to I kind of wish that in terms of breaking those obligations, that instead of just saying you lose all your powers to become a fighter, maybe there was some inverse that you could see here. Hey, what happens when you break this? And there should definitely be some kind of negative thing, but I think that you could just have something that's more. I always want to look at, well, how does this become gameable? How does this turn into further adventures, further things that can drive this character? Just saying, yeah, you become a fighter. What I would say is you become a fighter until you pick up another thing, and you might have to go to the chaotic cult, the chaotic fellowships, as opposed to these neutral or lawful ones. But that's kind of what my preference would be. Brian says, then you've got a 3 Rangers and a baby sitcom. Oh, there you go, 3 Rangers and a baby. Oh, I'm down for that. And then the last one, let's do the Wind Hooves. Their obligation: ride in the ashes of our fathers. Every member of the Wind Hooves must, every 3 years, ride the ancient war paths their ancestors took when they were enemies of the Empire, now barren trails marked by stones and wind. This ritual journey, called the Path of Reckoning, is made alone and without banners as a silent act of remembrance and atonement. Each ranger must carve their name into the marking stones along the way, adding it to the long list of those who now serve where their forebears once defied. That's kind of cool. This is one, though, that it seems to me it's the least gameable one, just because if you're playing with, because it seems like they're going to have an adventure here that's basically a lone wolf adventure where you're playing with one ranger, and that's awesome, and that works fine for this. But if I'm playing in a group game and I've decided to take this ranger, this is not a good obligation in my mind, not because it's not cool and doesn't have some thematic stuff. Yeah, I like all of that, but simply because once every 3 years, which, and a lot of times in campaign terms, years, they can either go quickly or slowly. Oftentimes it's slowly. It seems like things happen. Not a lot of time passes, but that's fine. If you can you're getting through multiple years, great. However, they have to go by themselves, which means that if you're going to role play this out, you're going to have to role play a bunch of time for that ranger, and they're going to be out of the mix, which if you're playing kind of a West March style game and everybody has multiple characters, not a big deal. Okay, this ranger's going to be gone for a month. But if you're playing most campaigns, which is usually you're playing with the same person, and then they have to either, leave the group or do something, right? It's just a little bit funny because literally part of the obligation is that you must go alone. Nobody can come with you. So, like, what do I do with that? Whereas a different obligation might be something that fits more into the flow of play when it's not just the ranger. If you're playing a solo game and it's just the ranger, then yeah, that works perfectly. And it's not, and I'm not saying because I don't like this obligation. I just wonder if there might not be a better fit for something that works better within the group concept than that one. All right, let's see what kind of companions we have here. So we have an Aelred, and please forgive if I'm pronouncing these things poorly. Which is that? Is it some kind of dog? Nope. Let's see. The Princes Among Horses. All right, cool. So it's a nice horse. The Mogu is a serpent. We've got a Rizig or a Rizigi, I'm not sure. But it's an intelligent fur-covered spider that's roughly the size of a large dog. That's pretty snazzy. The Stormcrow is an albino raven. We've got the Ulanuneg. That's like a fox, and the Vohu, which is a giant wolf. One thing I might say, and this is not really a knock on this, but it just might be nice, is if you wanted to use this and you didn't want to use these creatures, if there was like an alternate creature. I mean, I guess you could just use their armor class and stuff to find out, but it'd be nice, like, hey, if you're not using these, then substitute whatever, this kind of horse or this kind of serpent. But these are cool. Yeah, Brian likes the large spider buddy. Absolutely. Doesn't say what its intelligence is, but it does say that it is intelligent. Oh, these creatures form intense bonds with their ranger companions, often displaying signs of jealousy and possessiveness. That might be fun to roleplay out. All right, now we get on to gear. So we have some armor. So they're giving us armors. So maybe this is why they brought up scale mail, because like I said, it's not in BX, but that doesn't mean it can't be in OSE. But we do get brigandines, and we get scale mail, which is AC4, which would put it. Oh, they put it. It's yeah, no, I was right. Chainmail by itself is AC5. Scale mail slots in just a little bit better at AC4. Plate mail is AC3. So I was correct. Brian says, quoting for the spider, just let it wrap you up, my friend. It's just like a sleeping bag. Yeah, exactly. And then we have weapons, so we do get the bastard sword, we get hand crossbows, we get a hunter's net, and we get a steel whip. Ooh, a steel whip. Does that work? Several feet of finely wrought metal links, supple as rope, yet lethal as a blade. Ooh, that's cool. And then we have some items. Cloak of Autumn. Doesn't look like it's magic, but it's cool. Woven from tightly layered wool and dyed in mottled hues of green, gray, and brown. A Dobrana, which is a energy-rich food, specifically for animal companions. These are all expensive. The Dobrana is 5 gold pieces. They specifically put the cost in gold pieces, which I guess is BX also, right? Yeah, BX's costs are all in gold pieces, so I guess that tracks. Panacea. What is this? When swallowed, the panacea has the same effect as a cure disease spell. Okay, and price to match. And we have a storm lantern. Cool. So now we get some wilderness encounters. I'll just read a couple of these. It's a D12 table. 1 is a single shoe lies on the path. A trail of bare footprints lead into a deep pond. Yeah, I'm not following that. Thank you. 5 is a flock of rotting dead birds hangs from a leafless tree, each one tied to the branches with some twine. A figure stands at the tree's feet and congratulates on a job well done. Congratulates whom? The ranger, or who is it congratulating? Or is it congratulating the tree? The last one, number 10, a lantern flickers in the distance, bobbing gently, keeps a perfect pace of the party, never growing closer or further. So these are all seem pretty enigmatic. So you're going to have to kind of make something of these if you want. Now we get to the adventure. Blood on the Snow is an adventure designed for a single PC, ideally a ranger of 5th or 6th level, accompanied by their loyal companion. However, the referee can easily adjust for any number of players by adding monsters and or increasing their hit points. And then we've got a 6th level ranger named Dragana Vojvodiza. And if you want, so that's cool. So you get basically a pre-gen if you want to just play it. Let's see. Jasko's Proud Ranger. A Frigid Demise. I'm not gonna spoil this necessarily too much. It's cool that you get this adventure. I think it's a nice touch. So they're giving you this new ranger and some new stuff, and then they give, hey, here's something you can do to play through it. And I like the fact that it's a solo. I don't think not solo in that you're the GM and the player, but I guess maybe lone wolf is maybe what people use to describe it, where you just have one PC. Which back in the day in high school, I played a lot of this. I had a friend of mine, and there was just the two of us who were gaming. We're into gaming, and so we would take turns being the GM. So it could be a lot of fun. I know some folks do it with their significant others or partners, or just if you you have a gaming night and only one person shows up, having something you can run with one person is nifty and useful. Let's see. So we have this map here. And then, so they're running the wilderness kind of like a dungeon, which I remembered from one of their other adventures they also did. So we're not hex crawling through here. We kind of have a set map. And this is obviously going to be pretty, I mean, there's not a lot, in this wilderness part, there's not really any choices of direction. You're following the river. As you're following the river, you're taken through multiple areas. I suppose area 4 looks like it might be kind of detached from the river, but maybe that just might be how it's drawn. And then you get to the town. I like the art. Some of it looks like it might be or probably is public domain, but the other stuff like this, I don't know if it's stock or was made specifically for this, but I like it. I like the way they made the font, the axe red. Nice touch. And then we get the hideout, and we get a nice little map of the hideout. Ooh, I like that cloaked figure, whatever that is. Ooh, that guy looks like Snake Plissken. And then we get you arrive at. I guess this is just another table of, I guess, locations you might show up at. I'm not sure when this would come into play. Is it written in the adventure somewhere? But in any case, you can roll at some different things. You get to get locations and troubles, and I presume you could roll once and just read across, or you could roll twice and mix and match. But the locations are names, so they don't necessarily mean much to you or to me. But as far as what could be happening there, is it might be an absurdly high number of locals are albino, or sharp grass tears clothes and cut legs, or the locals worship ancient, bizarre pagan gods. So these I really like. The names, I'm sure, they're names from the setting, which is cool. But I like these kind of like, hey, what's happening? A weird thing happening in a town is a great sandboxy kind of thing to do. If you're roving in the hex crawl and you arrive somewhere new or you just don't have anything because the party's off the reservation, they get to the village or town. Hey, what's going on? Is there something weird going on in this town? It's nice to have something strange. Sometimes it can be overdone. It's really a flavor kind of thing. If you want your place to feel like something weird is happening everywhere, or if you just want to use it every once in a while to spice things up, but it's a nice resource. Is there more, or are we at the end? Oh, no, we're at the end. Well, we get one more table of roadside inns. So you get some names, and then some house specials, such as Boar's Head Pie. Finish the whole dish with a con check, and it's on the house. That's kind of funny. Purple Ale, you get +1 to your next save versus wands. Red Potato and Pine Nut Mash, you get 2 hit points after the next rest. Porcupine and Dill Sauce, you recover a hit point. These are all kind of cool. I like it. And you get some names like Thistle House or the Wayfarer's Mercy. And then we get the open game license. Ooh, and we also get, we get the pre-gen with the Ranger, 6th level Ranger and their companion, and we also get blanks. And we get some blank hex map, and we get more stuff. Very nice. I like it. I mean, they making choices. I mean, as with anything, right? Not every choice is one that I necessarily would make, but this is not mine. I think this will set a lot of people right. I think the one thing, and this is not a knock on it, but it's a little going to be dependent on what your ideal idea of the Ranger is, right? Because you're getting the kind of animal companion style. And I'm curious if they'll make other ones, if this is just in their setting, this is Rangers. Or if they might have one that's more Druid Ranger, where they're doing kind of the more magic stuff, but they're giving up the companion die. So that's just a choice. Nothing wrong with the choice. It's fine by me. Like I said, I kind of lean more into just kind of outdoorsy stuff, but I'll take an animal companion if I can have it. I like that there are consequences if bad things happen to your companion. I like that this kind of idea of the fellowship. I don't know if I would do it quite like this. I kind of might prefer it if it was more of almost a prestige class kind of thing where you could be just on your own doing stuff, and then you could join a fellowship, which gives you a perk and then maybe a consequence if you leave. But, this is good. One thing I think they said you get something with joining the fellowships. And I think since I went right past the descriptions to the obligations, I might have missed what the bonus you get. So let me just look at, say, for the Wind Hooves. Does it say if they get anything? Let's see. So the Windhoof says, born of the boundless steppes of Urkalor and a fierce warrior clan before being absorbed into the Empire centuries ago. The Windhoofs are unmatched horse archers raised in the saddle from childhood. Clad in silk-bound lamellar and riding steeds swift as storm winds, they strike with terrifying precision, loosing arrows at full gallop. The Fellowship's traditional lore sings of an ancestral pact with Batol, father of the Seven Winds, granting them favor in wind and weather. Though some imperial bureaucrats view them as little more than raiders, they see themselves as stewards of the steppe, riding with fierce honor and answering only to the governors of their provinces. Okay, so there isn't really. So it is flavor with the obligation. I thought maybe there was a little perk involved, but no. Even so, they're cool. But and I think they're almost more heritages, right? Because they really have, which I like, a strong geographical element, right? So the Windhooves are from the steppes. The White Arrow are from Dark Moon Forest. The Kirat Ashen are from the desert. So depending on where your ranger's from, it's kind of they're part of this tradition. Maybe that's even a little bit. Man, now I'm kind of thinking I like the idea of this tradition, but I almost like it's separate from the fellowships. Like you were from this tradition, there's certain things about it, but then the fellowships are something else. I'm gonna have to think about that. But I really like it's a cool idea. I forgot to look up how much this is on a drive through before I got started. But I know it's been already. I think I saw a post which reminded me that, oh yeah, I need to do this, was that it had gone. I think it's already gone silver or something on there. So I think a lot of people have been into it. OSE, and I guess I'm presuming that you could slot this into Dolmenwood as well. I haven't had a chance to look at Dolmenwood yet, so I don't know if they have a rangery type in there, but this will do you if you kind of like this. And I'm sure that one of these, what was one of his, was the White Arrow might be, since it's Dark Moon Forest, might be work really well in a Dolmenwood kind of setting. You can always, I think, pull these out too if you want to have. I really like specificity, which is something I like about these fellowships, is they're from a particular place. So I think if you have starting a campaign and you're in Dolmenwood, which is forest dominated, then just having these rangers, they're all about this. And you might have other rangers in other parts of the world, but in Dolmenwood, where we are, these are what rangers are. I kind of like that specificity, and you can even kind of pull some of this out and just say, hey, instead of having all these different fellowships, it's like, no, they're all the kind of this kind of thing. And of course, if you wanted to have for humanoids or demi-humans separate from humans, because here it's not really discussed. It seems to me, I get the sense that since it's a class, right? BX is racist class, so presumably these are all humans. But if you wanted to kind of split it off from the human part, which I guess in Dolmenwood I think doesn't have racist class, but maybe they does. I haven't read it. But if you're playing another system that split up class and species, basically, you could probably very easily do that here as well. So, but thanks to the folks over at Hell Winter Forge of Wonders for sending this to me. It was a fun read, and I'm partial to the Rangers, so I like the folks just doing things with the Rangers. Now I got a few minutes left, I think, and I wanted to look at Beyond the Twisted Portal, issue 3. This was also sent to me just kind of personally. The author, Tristan, is a friend of the channel. They are Heroes in Homebrew. I think that's the name of their channel on YouTube. They're a member on the Discord, and I've met them in person over at where was it? Claricon. Was it last year or the year before? Neither case. They've been pointing out in these Beyond the Twisted Portal zines, which I think are really cool. And this one is the one that just came out with. Sent it over to me. They did not ask me to cover on the channel, do anything like that. I just wanted to because I haven't had a chance to read it yet. And I figure, why not just read it on here? I did put the link, should be in the show notes of the description, kind of blah, 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 if you're interested. There's two things. So we have this map and then the issue itself. Let me read this part. Blackburn and Beyond. I've decided to make a shift in the content of Beyond the Twisted Portal. Going forward, this little zine of mine will feature content pulled from my campaign setting and games. Currently, the most fleshed out area in my setting is the city of Blackburn and its surroundings, so we'll start there. And as the setting grows and more adventures are played in my setting, that content will make its way to these pages. I really think that's a great idea, and it's kind of something that I've been aspiring to want to do also. I just think it makes sense when you can bring these things together in kind of these bite-sized chunks you could put together. Not actually in a dissimilar way than as to what the Book of Winter and Hellwinter Forge of Wonders is doing. Slightly differently by making kind of adventure, but you're sort of building up your world and stuff kind of in these zines. And I guess that's also what, what's that other, Vaults of Varn, which is another one that's on my list, did originally, was have these kind of zines putting the kind of world together. So I think it's a smart play. All right, most of the art is theirs. The cover was painted by their daughter, and photos were taken while wargaming. Cool, that's a cool painting. All right, so here we have this issue, and we have a map. So this is the map that he also presented as a separate file. We have it here. So we've got a look at the city of Blackburn, some rules for bards, some magic, a D100 list, some random tables, and a one-page dungeon. So a nice little selection of stuff. All right, so population, 8,143 souls. Alignment is neutral. Or overseer is Ross Turball, human fighter 6 with a lawful alignment. Let's see. I'm not going to read everything, but I'll read the kind of some of the summary here. Blackburn was once a sophisticated nation filled with philosophers, artists, as well as having a successful military. Its borders were ransacked by barbarians over the course of 300 years. These constant attacks dwindled the barony's power and eventually forced its last ruler, Baron Blackburn, to decree stricter laws that subjugated its people. After his reign, the people of the barony's last great city left the castle to fall into ruin and took their fate in their own hands. The city has a bustling marketplace and talented artisans that create murals on the sides of buildings. It is colorful and loud. Cool. Cool. All right, so we have some locations of interest. The House of Rule, Artisan's Workshop, the Royal Archives, Boggle's Books. Boggle Featherfinger will bind all books with no questions asked for a nominal fee. That's cool. So if you need stuff bound up, like maybe some scrolls or similar, let Boggle do it. Blackburn Military School. Don't let your fathers send your kids to Blackburn Military School. The Hot Baths, the Cells. Okay, that guy, that's some creepiness right there. The Gate. Okay, those are locations of interest. Then of special interest, we have the Fighting Pit, which is where? Where's the Fighting Pit? Okay, I see the numbers 2. I'm guessing is that a 9 or a 6? I guess it's a 9. Where's 10? Where's the Fighting Pits? Oh, there it is. Right there. Oh, we also have some sectors, kind of neighborhoods. The Barrows, we get some random encounters for the Barrows. The Baron's Fields, another random counter table. I like it. I always like when you can have some random encounters that are for each neighborhood, district, whatever. Let me just read. So one of the random encounters in the Barrows is 2 chariots race through the streets on a collision course with a hearing impaired child crossing the street. Ooh, your classic. Can you run across and save the kiddo before they're killed? And the Baron's Fields, for example, an encounter might be an old man approaches the party and offers to sell them a magic ring for 10 gold pieces. There's a 1 in 6 chance of the ring being magic. Well, look at that. I would just grab, this is where I would be like, all right, we're going to find every old man. And we're going to, this is where a video game, I totally would do that. We're like, hey, wait for the old man. I mean, that would probably be in the hint books too. Wait for the old man to spawn and go and buy a ring. And chances are you'll be able to get, endless rings. I would replace those after each use. The city center. A small band of musicians play on a makeshift stage. They play what they call heavy metal music and sing about monsters and magic. The band's name is Dragon's Breath, and they sell shirts with their band name stitched on it. Nice. Muse's Corner. Let's see. Noble Houses. The Wall. Ooh, I like these. Oh man, these are really cool because they remind me of the classic magazines and stuff that which I never really read in my youth, but I've bought on the secondary market. So I like these war game photos. The Wall, random encounters at the Wall, Order of the Red Eye. Secret society works in the shadows. Its members come from all levels of Blackburn's citizenry. They wear white masks with one eye covered in dripping red paint. They meet in a secret chamber below the city streets. Their goal. The Order believes that Blackburn has become lawless and seeks to install one of its members as the overseer. To do this, they resorted to blackmail, intimidation, even murder to put its members in positions of power. The irony of their methods is not lost on them. Cool. Then you have the Razorbacks, the Noble Council, which is political. So you have one secret organization, a criminal organization, political organization, a military organization, which is nice. So it kind of covers your bases, right? So you know kind of what's going on. All right, bards. Bards make their living following groups of adventurers from town to town and telling their stories. The relationship between bard and party is mutually beneficial. The party pays the bard out of the loot they find on their adventures, and then in turn, the bard tells stories, or writes poems about their exploits. Makes sense. So you can hold auditions. You have a talent table here for bards. If they roll poorly, then they're not good, and they get -2 to perform, but they might also get +2 to perform on the other side of it. We've got renown, we've got some fees. let's see. Renown is the level of talent of a bard. The level of talent, a bard's talent will affect the renown of the band when their stories are told. So basically, the better bard you have telling your tales, the better you'll come across. And we have a table for what happens with your infamy or renown. I'm guessing infamy is the opposite of renown. So when, yeah, that's notoriety, fear, notoriety, and dark legend. And then we have some bard styles. An epicist inflates deeds. A gallows poet turns dark actions into cult legends. And the spy liar, or leer, tracks behind, records secrets, leads to faction attention. Oh, I'm not sure what tracks behind. Records secrets. Your secrets or their secrets? Whose secrets is the bard tracking? Because if it's tracking the party secrets, ooh, they're not going to be happy with that bard when they find out. And some effects of renown and infamy, depending on the scores. At the low end, it's just some gossip. If it's renown, if it's infamy, your name is a bit notorious and you get minus reactions, but factions could hunt you. If you're infamous, you might be called a local villain. You might be known as a local villain, potentially get cursed, maybe. And then or on the opposite side, you might become a legend. And then events that might add to your bard stories could be slaying foes, surviving, defiling, betraying, saving citizens, or interacting with the bard. That's cool. Oh, I like this. Tome of Darkness, the Black Codex of Necromancy. Got some spells or rituals, a corruption table. I feel like channeling a little bit of Mork Borg. I like it. It seems like I'm guessing that these were cut out and then pasted back in to create this effect, which I think is really cool. I know you could probably mimic this digitally, but I prefer to think that it was actually done physically. D100 boons or banes might be born under a blighted star or marked by the underworld. And you got a whole bunch of these. Obviously, it's a D100 table. Have a savant's brain, be thin-blooded, have an unlucky aura, might receive whispers of the dead. Ooh, look at that. The jagged spiral of unflinching madness. And we got, what do we have here? So we have some room contents, which you roll a D8 for, some treasures on the D6 table, D12 wilderness discoveries, and some other random tables. Well, these are random tables for creating chaos in a world of the bizarre and fantastic. I also like that these are handwritten. I should do more of these too. I really do. I mean, accessibility suffers just as a PDF where I can't highlight the stuff to copy paste it out. And presumably if you have downloaded, as a thing, like as an art piece, it's great and I really like it. I wonder if there's a way where you can have this, but have a text readable one for really just usability. People who might not see so well or need help, but I really dig the style of it. And then we have Crypt of the Flesh Eaters, which is a little dungeon you have there. And then, oh, thank you. Well, there you go. It's a little bonus here. And the back cover, step beyond the twisted portal and discover the city of Blackburn. On the surface, it seems like a colorful city full of artisans, but its underbelly is filthy with the rot of criminal enterprise and corruption. This is a place where an adventuring party can find work, sell their loot, or get involved in intrigue. Beware, not everything is as it seems in Blackburn. Person will just as soon get a knife in the back as get rich. Very cool. Well, thanks, Tristan, for sharing this with me. I hope it was okay that I read online. I did not ask. I should have asked, but I didn't. I thought I'd be okay. This is up on Drive-Thru. This is obviously issue 3, so there's issues 1 and 2. And he also has a YouTube channel, Heroes and Homebrew, which I think he's been quiet on of late, only because he's been, real life stuff has been happening. But he's a mensch. I've met him in person, so I can actually say that. I mean, even if I hadn't, but I have met him in person, and I can vouch for him. Good stuff. So we got Rangers. We got a new city of Blackburn, if you need it, which presumably is going to be just the start of stuff that Tristan's going to be putting out from his home game, which I think is a great thing and something I want to do. I got a jet because I got to go to my game tonight, which is not a game I'm running, but a game I am playing in. And then tomorrow, maybe I'll do a community stream. We'll read through some stuff or something else. I don't know. I got a bunch of stuff I got to catch up on. And we're getting into con season, so I'm going to need to get some stuff ready for stuff that I will be running at the end of September and November, maybe 2 in November. I don't know. And then I guess PAX coming up. So we all got stuff to do. We got stuff to do. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Whew. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.